Hello, my friends. It is day 251, and we're reading Ezekiel chapter 37 through chapter 39. But before we get into our recap today, I want to thank you for taking a moment to check out this video. Hopefully, you're finding the yearly Bible reading program enjoyable and a true benefit to you as you continue to worship the Lord and study His Word. If you have not yet accepted the invitation, it's not too late. You can check out the invitation or the description box below, and there you'll find a link that will take you to the YouVersion Bible app where you can learn how to join the group and participate in the daily reading. So today we're talking about two important themes in the book of Ezekiel. Okay. One is in chapter 37 and the other is in chapter 38 and 39. All right. So let's talk about this for a moment. Okay. So chapter 37 is very popular. It's well known. We know it as the prophecy concerning the valley of dry bones. And this incredibly expressive prophecy uses language that demonstrates the God's intention of resurrecting his people. Now, in order for us to understand why this is important, we should recognize the fact that whenever a people or God's people is out of his presence, it means that they're no longer in life, which theoretically and in principle, it means that they are dead. We see the same sort of thing happens in the Garden of Eden. We see it happen in the story of the prodigal son. We see it happen here in this passage. There are themes that run throughout the Old Testament that signifies a people who are out of God's presence are no longer alive because they're no longer useful. Okay, it's just as if they're no longer existing. All right. So Israel, who is in exile, is depicted in this chapter as being dead. And the question is, can they live again? Well, as we read today, the answer is yes. And there is a sense of God's spirit that allows them, this is so really, really important, to come alive again, be functional, and become the person or the people that they were supposed to be from the beginning. In verse 15, throughout the remainder of the chapter, you see what this looks like. It looks like Israel and Judah reunited and continuing in the way that God had intended for them from the moment that he brought them out of Egypt. And what does that look like? It looks like that king, that servant David, coming along, being their shepherd, leading them as they follow the regulations and the laws and the decrees of God in covenant faithfulness. These themes should be really, really paid attention to, because whenever we read in the New Testament, we forget that this is what restoration looks like. And we forget that this is the goal that God wants to accomplish in his people. And when we forget that, we over-personalize and over-apply scriptures that essentially many times don't have anything to do with us, or definitely don't have anything to do with us within the priority that we have set for the passages that we are applying for ourselves. So we want to pay attention to these kinds of references and how they influence the New Testament expectation or the New Testament eschatology, as we talked about it yesterday, and brings us to a clear understanding of what God is doing in real time. Now, chapter 38, 39 is about Gog and Magog, and there are a lot of things said about this passage. Most notably, there have been ideas about these references, these cities, lands, people, being references to modern nations and things of that nature. So we've had instances where individuals will claim that this is a reference to Russia. Some say China, all kinds of things. And I was sitting, today as I was just pondering, I think I was driving somewhere. I was thinking about these passages, and I was thinking about everything we've read up to this point. Now, from chapters 20, 26, maybe. No, even further back than that. From chapters 25 all the way up to chapter 32, we've seen that the Bible is specifically trying to show us how God is judging nations that have tried to oppose Israel. When we get to chapter 38, it is obvious that this Gog, if you will, and then ultimately Magog, is forming an alliance of people to oppose the people of God and to destroy them, or at least go into war with them. The thing that I find very interesting in modern interpretations of a passage like 38 and 39 is up until this point, we have been concerned with all ancient civilizations, all ancient nations. We have not yet thought to imagine that Egypt, when it was referenced, was being referenced or was referencing a modern Egypt, or Tyre, or Ammon, or Moab. None of these places that we've read so far seem to imply in our mind and our interpretation that this was a modern reference to a city or a nation or people. What is interesting is that in chapter 38 and chapter 39, we begin then to deviate from what we have done for the last 37 chapters. And we begin to apply to Gog and Magog modern references, equivalents, and phenomena that may be altogether different from what the intention of these passages are. So then the question is, what is Gog and Magog referring to? Is it an alliance of nations? Absolutely. That's very obvious. But the question is, for what purpose and in what timing? Now, for me, as I think about what we've done so far in reading the book of Ezekiel, it makes perfect sense to me that whatever alliances are being formed are within the world in which the prophet is speaking, just like every other reference was referring to the world in which the prophet was speaking. To confirm that idea is to look at verse 5, where it references Persia, Ethiopia, Libya, Gomer, which would have been references to actual places and people groups in that world. So to imply that this is reference to Russia or any modern area would miss the point altogether. And more importantly, it would break the rules of hermeneutics that we've used up to this point, which would put any question, or rather put any claim to consistency into question. Okay. So what I read from this, from the very top, is that these are nations, these are people who live in the world of the ancient Israelites and the ancient prophets. And it is obvious that they're trying to conspire against Israel, against God's people. But the point is, God is going to overthrow them. And there are a number of depictions in this passage that are carried over to the New Testament. We want to consider those things within the scope and the method by which prophets would speak. Okay, so a lot to think through here. We'll see it again in Revelation, but we want to at least build some consistency on how we interpret the Bible, at least how we interpret it up to this point, and we want to remain consistent to that. All right. Well, friends, thank you so much for watching. I hope you've got something out of this little recap. Let me know what you're thinking. Leave your comment in the comment box below. Hopefully it'll generate some conversation. Until next time, thank you for watching. Take care. God bless. And remember, live by the word.